What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. Today's guest is an entrepreneur and opportunist at heart. He has over 30 years of experience in the hospitality industry. His favorite part of the designing process is wowing the clients. He is the president and principal at SB Architects. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Lee. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Dan. Great to be here.
It's so good to have you on. I wanted to share with our guests, so much about our industry is all relationship, and we like working with the people that we know, and if we could keep working with the people that we know or have a relationship with, or it just makes it all the more better as far as what we're trying to do in hospitality. And I've met you a few times over the years, but we share a really wonderful friend in common in David Kennedy. And I remember him telling me about you and just always speaking so fondly about you. And I'm just happy to have friends and friends of friends on here to just hear about your journey. So thank you for being a mutual friend.
You're very welcome. Say hello to David.
I will. I always do. I see too much of him recently. Just kidding. I can never have enough, David. But one of the things that we talk about, you've built this practice and it's grown and grown. I'm very intrigued by how the lion's share of your work as an architect stays in the arena of hospitality. So it's a two-part question. Is one, how do you define hospitality? And then what's keeping you? What's kept you in this world of our hospitality and design within hospitality, and won't let you go, or you won't let yourself go? Which one is it?
Well, I guess a two-part question. I'll take the first one first. How do I define hospitality personally? I think hospitality is, can be measured by the degree to which you're deviating from the norm, or deviating from the expected, or deviating from your day-to-day life. So when you're enjoying hospitality in the form of whether it's a vacation or a staycation or leisure, however it may be defined, I think it's going to a place and experiencing the place, and experiencing it in a way that you've got a story to tell. You've got some memories that you've made. You've done some things that you may not have done before, seen some things, eaten some things, met some people, and you came home and told people about it. And I think that is the measure of a great hospitality experience. And I think your second part of the question was, how did I get into it and how long have I been doing it? I didn't start in hospitality. I had a summer internship in college at an architecture firm, as most architecture students do, and I ended up working on a prison. I kind of decided at that point that was probably not the ideal building type for me. And I, didn't even really understand that much about being able to choose, building types or a path in architecture. But when I decided that maybe I should apply to firms that actually did fun stuff, I got a job with a company called Glazier Architects in 1990, just around the time I graduated from Cal Poly. And they specialized in hospitality, and I had done my senior thesis at Cal Poly on hospitality. And so this was something that was interesting to me, and travel was interesting to me, and going to interesting places was interesting. So that's kind of how I got into it. And I never turned back. And there's many tangential aspects of hospitality, whether it be restaurants or clubhouses or spas or, even retail. But as a building type, I think hospitality is, for me, the best.
I'm also curious, for you as an architect, and working on all the different types of projects that you work on, that you just mentioned, from clubhouses to hotels to you name it. If you're ever working on a really big mixed use property, and there may be elements of design that you're not working on in that larger mixed use, are you brought in to discuss how this would translate from a hospitality perspective?
Let me make sure I understand that question. Exactly. Well, we do work on lots of mixed use projects. Some of the most notable may be, Santana Row, the Miami Design District. And all those projects have such a varying components to them. Most of our mixed use projects are retail driven, with a hospitality component and most often a residential component. And we specialize in in the hospitality and the residential, but if there are pieces and parts that are not within our bailiwick or we're not experts, we welcome others to participate. And I think it's another thing about the industry is that we work on so many projects and big projects all over the place that it's very seldom that we're designing the project ourselves. I mean, we're not just locking ourselves in a room and coming up with the idea in a silo. And then it gets built like that. I mean, there's so many influences and so many great partners, whether it be landscape architects or interior designers or restaurant designers or office designers that supplement all that we do.
Right. And then when you're kicking off those projects where you might not be working on one area of it and someone else may be, do you guys compare notes as far as how hospitality and what that lens is for each of those projects? Or do you kind of stay siloed in your part of the project? Is there basically, I'm trying to get into, is there like cross collaboration and where you design for hospitality all the time for people who don't, what kind of tidbits or best practices or experiences can you share with them?
Yeah, I think a couple specific projects come to mind. We're doing a very large project called Rivana, or we call it Innovation Station. It's I don't know, between 4 and 6 million square feet in Washington, D.C. And it's got all kinds of components to it. And we were paired with another architect called Michael Shue in Dallas. And architects sometimes don't like the forced marriage. But we keep a very open mind and we think of ourselves as collaborators, and they are amazing. I mean, they were experts at the guest experience relating most, to retail. And, we're experts at the guest experience related to hospitality. And so, we defined kind of common values, a common language, using image boards and, word clouds and things, so that made sure that we were reading from the same hymnal, the same sheet of music, and then they're left to interpret the ground plane, perhaps on that project, the way that they saw fit, and then we, focused a little bit more on the hospitality. And the other is a project called The Link in Dallas that's got, office, retail, hospitality, and we are but one of many architects, and we're focused on both an office building and a hospitality project. And and we think about the arrival experience, the first impression, the last impression, views, where the various hospitality elements are located, whether it's meeting spaces with great views, rooftop bars, rooftop restaurants. So we bring our unique hospitality lens to the project, but we're very curious about the lenses of others, and we do believe that the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts, and the collaborative aspect of this and the synergies between uses and the synergies between firms could make better projects.
And I think that's a really good segue into it's one of the topics that I've been having with people is how hard it is to find quote unquote good people for what they're doing, right? And so in the hospitality world, and whether it's on the design side, operation side, there's this idea of this that's inherent in hospitality, from collaboration, empathy, listening, putting others first, or really getting into the shoes of what all the other stakeholders want, and making sure that they have a great journey. When you're recruiting and building your teams, how do you discern how those newcomers to your company would excel at hospitality? Do you have like a filter for how you select how you find and then how you select your team or teams.
Well, I spent a lot of time on that topic. I think coming to SB from my prior firm, I had a chance to really build a professional environment where I wanted people to be able to thrive personally and professionally, and test the theory that people who are happy at work and are engaged and are passionate about the kind of work that they're doing are doing better work. And that was a theory, and I think that the jury is in. And I think that we have a very, very high level of morale and a very, very strong culture. And we spent a lot of time talking about what hospitality means, my definition and the definition of others. We have designed our own office to feel like a hospitality space. And we treat each other and we treat ourselves in a manner that we feel is consistent with the projects that we're working on. And what I mean by that is that, we have, an in-house yoga instructor who will come in and do yoga, and we can do that together to build bonds. We take every other Friday and we have a wind down where we're all, honing our presentation skills, and talking about things that we've designed or things that we've seen that we feel are relevant and important. So we spend a lot of time, refining and educating our staff and really trying to inspire them. And some people like that, and other people don't. So, we look for people who are curious. We look for people who are active and looking at the world through a very broad lens. We look for people who have experienced places and things that they might be able to bring to the projects. We're sitting around kind of thinking about a project and we're saying, oh, have you been over here? Have you been to this project? Have you been to that place? And to the extent we can all, offer our personal experiences and put those into this great stew of ideas. And then out of that comes an original idea that's infused by the passions of our team. We think that's a really potent, a potent composition.
And then as you grow and work on more and more projects, you need more and more people. And how do you attract those like-minded people who are curious, who are active, who have a really broad lens? Like, is there a way that you find them or attract them?
Yeah.
Like, I hear those are great practices. And you said a wine down or wind?
Wine. Yeah. So we have a little wine,
Oh, great.
Projects. We have people Zoom in, we have guest speakers. It's a vibrant time to share. That's evolved over the years. But how do we find these people? It's tough, man. It's a tight market. Just last week, we sent 2 of our young architects down to the University of Arizona, and they went to a career fair, and they were there representing us and our passion and our personality, and hopefully attracting like-minded people who want to join the firm. And we do these career fairs. We have interns from universities because we feel that they are bringing new ideas to us as much as we're sharing ideas with them. We have recruiters who are working on our behalf. But I think the most important thing that we do is we ask our staff who are most happy here to reach back to their academic days, which might be longer for some of us than others, or their past jobs, or they're just socially they're out hanging out with other architects, and help us recruit, and we actually pay them for that. We have a reward system, which is not as much as we pay recruiters because that's very, very expensive, but we would much rather pay our staff to help us recruit because they know us better than any recruiter ever will. And that's been a really great thing. And if you look at all the people who work for SB, there's a significant amount of them that came to us through friends who worked here. And they're already pre-qualified if they're liked by people that we like as employees.
It's interesting you say that, and I call that like a cultural filter, if you will, in the sense that I must place, I don't know, a score of people every year in jobs, connecting them. it's not what I do, but I enjoy it. And mostly what I enjoy is I get to know that person that's that's looking for a job. And then I know the people who are looking to hire, and I can say, oh, you know what, they're going to be a
Yeah.
really good fit.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And I also, I don't know, I think a lot of companies talk about this in theory, but I don't think really do it in practice. But it really resonated with me in basically hearing you say, you guys are your best recruiters because you know who you're looking for, and you know who's going to enjoy themselves at yoga or that wine or the wine down where you're practicing your presentations and having speakers come in.
Yeah, just today, just this morning, I got an email from one of our young architects who's organizing, an unofficial ski trip, and we're doing, tours of, construction sites. And so there's a lot of things that we do to engage the staff and keep them here, because it's one thing to recruit them. It's another thing to retain them.
Yeah.
When I get involved in these interviews, I don't really want to look at people's drawings and all that kind of. I want to understand who they are as a person, and if it's not a cultural fit, I don't need to look at the drawings. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of, for me, is that if I can get along and have a conversation, with this person, a dialogue with this person, then let's go to the next level. But if we can't get past that, then there's no point. And I remember when Don Sandy interviewed me 22 years ago to come from Hill Glazier to what was then Sandy Babcock. I remember this vividly. I walked into the Ritz-Carlton for breakfast with Don Sandy, and I had this giant bag of all my drawings and everything. I was ready to just show him all the drawings. And I never took a single drawing out. He didn't want to see the drawings. He goes, look, if you're here, you must know how to do the work. What I want to understand is like who you are as a person. And that meant a lot to me. And we had a great conversation and became, great friends, and traveled the world together, and it all worked out.
I'm curious, what's the current head count of your team? Like, how many people are currently working at SB?
118.
Wow.
118. And, for a long time, San Francisco and Miami were our two offices, and San Francisco has always been our headquarters and still is. But right now we're about 47 in San Francisco and about the same in Miami. And then we've recently opened a Dallas office and a London office, and we're hovering around 10 or so at each of those offices. And then we opened an office in Medellin, Colombia. And then we have a lot of people working remotely, which is sort of an outgrowth of COVID. So we've got a concentration of maybe 10 people in Orange County, a couple in Seattle, one in New York, one in Vietnam. And so, but offices, we have 5 offices, but 118 people working for us globally.
Wow. And then for you, as the head of the company and like the visionary leader, if you will, what are the practices that you do to keep in touch with everyone, and to make that diaspora of growth kind of feel more centered and connected?
Yeah, the last thing we want is people to feel, like they're satellites, or they're disenfranchised, or they're not part of the mothership. And so we do a whole bunch of things. But one of the biggest, I think, was maybe 10 years ago when we were growing, and I felt very important that we expand our ownership base. Right. I mean, at that time there was maybe myself and a couple others that were owners of SB Architects, but I saw the need to expand that. And so, up to very recently, we had 14 owners, and I owned more than anyone, but, we continued to sell portions of the firm and shares to bring a broader base to our leadership. And then those people, those associate principals and vice presidents and owners, were charged with carrying this torch of unification, if you will. And so it wasn't just, vested solely in myself and, my senior partners. Now that was passed to the junior partners and associate principals. And so I deal most of the time with that group, with that leadership group, and then they deal with the rest of the staff and the teams and the studios. And so, but we spent a lot of time, building teams and, having team meetings and trying to, get people back into the office. That's been a big challenge for us because with, remote working can work, but remote onboarding is very difficult. Bringing in new staff and, infusing them with the culture, getting them acclimatized with, who we are and how we work. There really is no substitute for, being in the office and sitting down face to face and, drawing together.
I totally agree. And I feel like we're still in this interstitial moment where we're all trying to like figure out this marketplace of what work looks like for the future.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of silver linings that have come out. I really love hearing about the shared equity, because it can really help everyone feel more vested, for sure.
Right.
And not just feel, but actually be and have a role in the success of the company, which is really incredible. When did you kind of think about that? When did you start introducing that on your journey?
I think that was about 13 years ago. And, and one of the reasons that I left my prior firm, albeit I was a partner, I didn't see that they were going to get to the point of expanding, that leadership to the point where, the people that were, there wasn't a logical growth path there. And I feared here that if we didn't have a logical growth path, then people would seek that growth elsewhere. And we had invested so much time and energy into building this team that I felt that the only path, to retain these people and to continue to, inspire them and, keep them, financially and professionally and personally fulfilled was to sell them part of the company, which we did. And, some people would look at me and go, you're an idiot. Like, you own like so much of this company. Why would you divide up the pie? And my answer to that was because the pie is going to get bigger. And, I'm happy to cut it up into smaller pieces. But because I think the pie is going to get bigger as a result of that. People are going to stay longer. They're going to feel more committed. They're going to behave like owners, which is a slight uptick from your behavior as an employee.
Yeah. And so much of that behaving like owners or having that vested interest has so much to do, I think, with hospitality as well, because when you're really vested in your team and the larger mission, truly, like from your heart, I feel like it's that much easier to both give and receive hospitality or empathy or whatever you want to call it, so that we're just all kind of in tune to the same frequency moving forward. And I totally agree. The pie absolutely will get bigger. As looking back on your career, when you were starting it, you went to San Luis Obispo, correct?
Yeah.
Did you start off as architecture there, or did you?
I did. Yeah. I kind of was all architecture all the time since junior high school. So there was no question that that's what I was going to do. So yeah, I went to Cal Poly and that was my focus. And late in the game, became interested in, in the hospitality aspect of architecture.
And if you were back at San Luis Obispo at Cal Poly there, thinking about where you are now with your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 offices, 118 people spread out, like, could you have imagined the journey that you've been on back then?
Not really. No. I mean, I was just hoping to get a job out of college, honestly. And that was itself kind of tough, and, it didn't pay well, and, it was a long slog. But somewhere in there, I mean, I always had a bit of an entrepreneurial idea about things. Like I had my own business doing stuff in high school, and then I started a business in college, and I did a bunch of like freelance work. And so I kind of imagined that I may be able to do something slightly different than sort of the average career path. And fortunately, I was around people who gave me those chances, and I was oftentimes maybe that squeaky wheel asking for those chances. And, it caused me to be maybe a little bit more of a self-advocate than I otherwise would have been. But I think that, you gotta identify where you want to go and maybe, make your own path to get there.
Mm-hmm. And when you were working at your previous firm and you decided, actually, actually forget at the last firm, because it could have really happened anywhere. When you really took, I heard about or thank you for sharing about the entrepreneurial or running experiences in high school or college. But when you were out there working and being the squeaky wheel and maybe it's not working for you, bring us all back to that moment where you took that first entrepreneurial step well into your career path. Like what was holding you back, and then what pushed you forward to take the step?
Yeah, I think when I was made a partner at Glazier, I was I don't know, I think it was 30 or something like that, which was a big deal for me at the time. But I never really felt like a partner. I kind of felt like I was still an employee, albeit I had some ownership. And the difference between feeling like an employee and feeling like a partner was to be able to affect in a positive way the culture of the office, and to do all the things and have the latitude and the freedom to do all the things that I was able to do at Sandy Babcock and SB Architects that I wasn't able to do there. And I just saw that I was never going to be able to get there. And so I, took a leap of faith. And again, people said, "Dude, you're a partner at Glazier. What are you doing?" I'm like, well, it's just, I think I could do something more. And I had to go backwards before I went forwards. I sold my shares and I became an employee again at Sandy Babcock, and they hired me as an employee with the hope that I might be able to deliver on all the things I said I could do. And then they sold me some shares, and they gave me more latitude, and I was able to bring some people from prior relationships and win some work, and do some things that I was like, wow, we're kind of running the place now. And it felt very liberating. And it felt very gratifying to, see change being made and see people being happy and inspired and allowed to, do things differently and to think on their own rather than be under the thumb of others. And so I welcomed those ideas. I would never, say, well, that's a bad idea because it's not mine. If it's a good idea and it came from the UPS guy who came in to drop off a package, whatever. I mean, we're looking for good ideas, and if you've got some thoughts, then throw them out there. And there's no bad ideas. And so we really kind of opened it up to a highly communicative, highly collaborative group. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of SB Architects, is that we think of ourselves that way. And if you go back to some of your opening statements about David Kennedy, I met David Kennedy at a conference probably 20 years ago. And a lot of people burn through these conferences and, shake a lot of hands, but don't really make a lot of relationships. And I think, making those relationships, whether with someone who is going to benefit you personally or professionally, it's not really the objective. Like, you're just making relationships with people that you like, and then the work will come, and you can leverage that into bigger things.
I totally agree, and that completely resonates with me. So earlier you mentioned a couple of projects. I know this innovation station, I think it was called. You said it's how many million square feet?
It started off at 9. It's smaller now, but it's big. I mean,
it's huge. So would that be like, if you were to create a spectrum of types of projects you work on, would that be on the larger end of the spectrum?
Yeah, that's big.
Okay. And then what's like on the other side of the spectrum, what's a smaller project that you would find you and your team working on?
I just asked my staff, myself, and then I asked somebody to help me answer the question. I said, how many projects do we have under construction right now? Like, how many? And then, how many hotel rooms are under construction and how many hotel rooms per project. And I love like Excel and charts and stuff. And so I was able to look at like really big projects and really small projects. But the answer to that question happens to be 20 projects. And I think it's 1,500 hotel rooms and 1,700 residential units that are actually under construction right now. But small projects for us are, I got a call to add 4 guest rooms at the Farmhouse Inn in Sonoma. And we took it because it's a cool project and we thought we could really make a difference. And we ended up getting them 9 guest rooms and a spa and, did some things that they didn't think we could do. And so that's a small project for us. We're talking about some small glamping projects in Tahoe and other places. And, those are small. 50-room hotel is on the small side. I think the average size hotel project that we do is maybe 175 rooms, which means that we do some at 500 and 600 and some at 4 and 8 and 20. But we don't do lots of 3,000 room hotels or stuff like that. Those are a little bit big for us.
So the reason why I was asking, because like that innovation station sounds ginormous.
Yeah.
But if you were to take that innovation station on one side of the spectrum and then that Farmhouse Inn in Sonoma on the other side, and I were to ask you, what kind of a thread could you weave between those two very different types of projects that would attract you to both of them with your hospitality hat on?
Yeah, no, that's a great question and a very specific answer. The innovation station project, early in that dialogue with that client, was a great client, by the way, Timberline. They didn't want to build another Reston, if you will. Nothing's wrong with the Reston project in Virginia, but it's a large project that brick and stucco and stuff like that. And so we really wanted to create something that was, because it was further away from Washington, D.C., getting out of the urban core. I didn't come up with this term. One of our clients came up with a term called bucolic urbanism. And so that was a blend between, the city and the country, lots of open space, lots of walkability, lots of things that are more akin to the rural environment than the urban environment. But it's a very urban project. It's a very dense project. But how can we bring that bucolic kind of sensibility to it? And that was attractive to me. Like, wow, we're not gonna do just another giant 9 million square foot project. We're gonna do it in a way that brings this kind of experiential guest experience. That was a really big part of the initial dialogue of that project, and it informed the way that we were planning it and where the density was and where it was very low density and where it was very hilly and maintaining some of the natural features of the site, whether it be rocks or stones or valleys or whatever. It wasn't just let's flatten it and let's put a bunch of tall buildings. It was not that. And it was the same, it's the same answer for the Farmhouse Inn, which is, in Sonoma, and they've got a very strong sense of Sonoma and a very strong sense of themselves. And they wanted us to enhance that. And so, one of the first things I did when I went to the site, when they told me that we're going to add 4 rooms, and I said, you could add so many more rooms if you just get rid of all this asphalt. You've got this asphalt road that goes right through this project. It's, what if you tore it all out? Oh, we can't do that. And, so we figured out how to tear it all out, and we replaced it with decomposed granite and gardens and, all the things that people imagine in Sonoma. And so I guess in both projects, I was excited about them because we could make a difference. We could do something that other people weren't doing, and something that would be very, very attractive to the market because it was such a deviation from the norm.
Yeah, and that's interesting because obviously, on the larger side project, the innovation station, that's a huge one. I'm sure it's a great contract, but you're also kind of pushing the envelope of this and kind of inventing this idea of bucolic urbanism. I never heard that before, but yeah. So, but then on the other side, on the micro side, again, you're really looking at it for how you can make a big difference on such a smaller personal scale. And I guess both of them are involving that, like, what's the individual experience walking through, which I guess is true for any project, but I'm just trying to see like what would be the most attractive part from the hospitality perspective. And
Well,
I don't know, I
you know
lost,
what's
yeah,
interesting about, what's interesting about the question, and I talk about this often, is that, you know, they're projects where we're asked to, like, you know, which one of these mountaintops do you think the project should go on, right? It's at that level of macro, right? It's several thousand acres, and, you know, we're deciding where the project is going to go on the several thousand acres. And then there's projects that are very, very small, and we're kind of debating whether or not the Phillips head screw should be orthogonal or should be diagonal. You know,
right.
and to be asked as a professional to have that range of you know, understanding or opinions about or experience with those things is pretty broad, and it's super fun. And there's not that many professions that have that breadth of experience, where one day you're having a conversation about this macro, and the next day you're having a conversation about micro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because most principals at firms that I speak to, you know, they have their lane, they stay in their lane. Okay, so it could be hospitality, but then it could be, you know, more specifically a 220 room guest room, or hey, we're in the select service or full service or luxury. But I love the fact that, you know, from the super micro to the uber macro,
Yeah.
you're finding that thread throughout.
Yeah, it's just a different lens. I mean, I just thought of this because I'm looking at a telescope over here, but if you put a lens in the telescope, and, you know, and your objective is to see, like, the greatness of like how broad the universe is, like, that's one lens. If you put another lens in and you're looking at, like, those little craters on the moon, and so and they're all interesting, and they're all architecture, but it's just a different lens that you're looking at it through. And so some days you're talking about, gosh, you know, how are we going to get that tub, you know, and to have a view, and how's that going to be configured, you know, within the bathroom, and, you know, and then, you know, the next day is like, you know, should it be 4 hotels or 8 hotels? So it's daunting in a way, but it's you know, it's very exciting. It's very exciting to have that kind of opportunity to look at the world of hospitality through so many different lenses.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, at least for me, and I know our listeners and you, it's that idea of hospitality that is so exciting, right? It's that experience, like going back to what you said in the beginning, it's delivering on something above what our everyday expectations are, right? Or way above. Um, so looking at your past and now kind of the present of where you are, with you at the helm of SB and looking forward, what's exciting you most about what you see out there in your crystal ball?
Well, you know, I think that the world is moving, you know, to a new definition of luxury. I think, you know, the luxury that we all, you know, maybe grew up with or imagined to be the pinnacle of luxury, whether it be, you know, crown moldings or, you know, marble on top of marble, and, you know, that luxury in that sense, I think is just but one definition of luxury. But I think the new definition is to have a bespoke experience, and you don't care whether you've got crown moldings, and you don't care whether you know, all those trappings of luxury, the expensiveness of it, the quantification of it, I suppose. We're now interested in the quality of it. It's a qualitative luxury rather than a quantitative luxury. And I think that gives us so much more latitude, because all those rules of thumb and the you know, the rules have almost been thrown away, right? The rule book
Totally.
has almost been thrown away. And, you know, I was just talking to a person I was thinking about hiring, and the guy was like, you know, I don't really know that much about hospitality. And I'm like, perfect, you're hired. Because, you know, what we don't want is to say, like, you know, let's do hospitality like we've always done it. Let's do hospitality like we did it in the 90s or the, you know, the early 2000s. You know, let's forget about all that. Let's start over again. and just talk about how can we make the greatest guest experience, and let's design the architecture around that.
I love it. And this comes up a lot as well in these conversations where it's this idea of rookie smarts, right? Where, okay, you're new to something, you may not have experience in it, and that's okay, because you're bringing a fresh new perspective that will help push us forward in whatever this new idea of luxury may be, or hospitality, or whatever new initiatives you guys might be working on at SB. So you said earlier that you were all architecture from the time you were in middle school.
Mhm.
How did you know that?
You know, I always like to draw, and I always like to build stuff. And when I was little in elementary school, my mom would drive around to these construction sites with us, and we would take all this construction. I mean, not steal it, but like we'd take up. Maybe we stole some stuff, but we bring all this material home, wood and all that, and we build these like crazy forts, and then we draw stuff, and so the combination between drawing things and then, having a tangible result of a day's work. It's like I built that thing. And so was very satisfying to me. And then you combine that with a personal interaction, and it just seemed like a really great career in architecture, like, drawing things and ultimately building things, working together. It just suited me.
Wow. And then thinking about, the Scott I'm speaking to right now, and then the middle school Scott, if you were to appear in front of your middle school self, what advice would you have for yourself?
I would say take risks, and get comfortable with the notion that you're not ready for this yet, because you probably never are going to be ready for anything. And if you're waiting for that perfect moment when you're finally ready, I think life's going to pass you by, and you just got to jump in and say, you know what, I'll do it. I'm gonna take that on. I might fail, but I'm gonna do it. And if I do fail, I will have learned something through that. And so, volunteering to, take on a task that was well above my ability, or, start a company, not knowing anything about starting a company, lots of failures. But, it's an accelerant to growth, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so I signed up for all kinds of stuff that like had no business signing up for. But then I did it, and I came back and I'm like, wow, that was pretty brutal. But I'm better equipped now than before. And if you wait until you're ready, whether it's to get married or have kids or start a company or quit a job, or be financially independent, you're never ready.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to do it.
Yeah, I believe inertia is the mind killer, and you got to break through that. So I totally agree. I heard an interesting question the other day. I don't know where I heard it, but everyone always, or you always hear this question, or at least I do. Hey, if you could fail, what would you try doing if you knew you couldn't fail? That was the question, right? And you hear that a lot, right? What would you do? But I heard it posed a different way. And I'll ask you is, what would you do knowing that you would fail? If you could try anything new, what would you do knowing that you would fail at it, or could fail at it?
What would I do if I knew I would fail?
Yeah.
Man, that is a tough one. Right now in my career, I suppose right now I would actually do less. I kind of want to do less. I've been kind of burning it, the candle at both ends for 30 years or so. And I would do less, but I've got this kind of feeling that I might not be very good at that. But again, based on my earlier comments, maybe I should just try it, see what happens.
Yeah,
And
maybe inertia the other way.
And I think, and I said, I don't think I would fail at that. I think I could keep myself very interested and very busy. And the other thing is that all those people that, we empowered, so many years ago, and, that were way over their heads, perhaps at the time. And that was a risk for them to accept the challenge to be an owner of an architecture firm. 10 years later, those people, are amazing. And so they don't actually need me to tell them what to do at this point in the trajectory of the firm, right? We have evolved beyond, Scott's going to tell everybody what to do. These people have been through the trenches with me and on their own, and they might not know it yet, although I think it's becoming apparent to them that they know how to do it, and they're not going to fail.
Yeah. Well, and also going back to failure, I read this on a t-shirt once and it really resonated with me is, failure is really just unfinished learning. And I think we can all learn from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also it's inspiring to hear, the team that you've assembled and the shared ownership or creating or enabling that ownership mindset to grow. I think that will also enable you to try to fail at doing less, right? Because you've created, in a way, a grand alignment where everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
And that's envious.
Yeah, it's very true. And as I think more and more about doing less and less, I do take comfort in this, this network of, network's not the right word, but this broadened base of SB architects that, I used to go to the meetings and I used to do all the talking and all the presenting, right? That's how it once worked. And now I find myself consciously, let's go to the meeting and I'm going to say about 5% and you're going to say about 95%. And that's working. And I'm amazed actually at how far all these folks have come and how they found their voice and their confidence and their abilities in the same way that I did. Perhaps I did it with not quite as much support at the time. So I'm happy to provide the support to these young architects and see them grow perhaps faster and further than I was able to grow.
That's awesome. Yeah, support, mentorship, growing leaders. I think it's something that we all can benefit from and learn from. And thank you for sharing. If people wanted to learn more about you, Scott, or SB, like what's the best way for them to take that first step and break their inertia?
Well, reach out for sure. I mean, it's like, don't sit there and go, yeah, maybe I should reach out to that guy, and then don't do it. I mean, just do it. And the easiest avenue to get to me, I think for this particular topic would be through LinkedIn. And many people do, I've got high school students who are like, kids or friends of mine. Oh, my kid wants to be an architect. I'm like, okay, that's great. Your kid should call me. But you don't call me and arrange a meeting with your kid, so, and they do. And so I've had, college students and high school students and, coming into the office and, as much as they might want to talk to me, I oftentimes will, speak to them for a while, but then talk to someone who has more recently been in architecture school, not 30 years ago, but maybe 3 years ago. And it's been great. It's been super fun. And we're really proud of our culture and our office and having, high school students or college students into our office and to see how excited they are to see, wow, this is like the real world. I mean, I've been in classrooms and talking about what architecture may look like and feel like, but wow, now I'm in an office and look at how fun and exciting and energetic it is. And to see people really complete that idea, that thought about wanting to be an architect.
Yeah. And I bet it also resonates with you because you remember when you were that and you had that excitement, right?
No, when I was in high school, and wanted to be an architect, I said, God, I really want to go and like work for an architect. So I got back when there was these things called yellow pages. I got this like the yellow pages, and I called all the architects in my town. I lived in San Mateo. I called all these architects, and I'm like, yeah, hey, my name's Scott. I'm like a junior in high school, and I want to come and I can just come and work for free, just to kind of just get it, see it. And people were like, no. And so this one company said, yeah, that'd be great. We're just changing offices and you can come in and help, but we want to, we'll pay you. I'm like, oh, great, even better. And so I get there and, I'm painting things and whatever, but eventually I kind of got in there and I got to draw something and I got the letters and things. And it was great. And I want to be able to provide, that kind of opportunity for young people to, see it. And maybe they won't like it. And maybe that's the best thing. They'll come in and be like, you know what? I don't want to be an architect. Oh, great. Then just don't waste your time anymore. Go to med school. But there's no point in going to like 4 or 5 years of architecture school only to then find out that you actually hate the profession. So like,
Totally. Or maybe they want to go design oil rigs or something like that. Something or like refineries, some crazy engineering degree. But yeah, I often find that sometimes experience of things you don't want to do have a more profound impact than experiencing what you enjoy doing, because it makes you take that right turn, like, oh wow, let's get away from that and see what this new endeavor may be.
That's the same interaction that oftentimes we'll have with our clients where, we say to them, look, it's okay to not like it. Because if you don't like it and you tell us that you don't like it, at least we know that. And we've got thick skin. I mean, having been in architecture school and architecture for so long, I mean, not everyone likes what you do. And it's a very iterative process, but to find out what clients don't like, or what brands don't like, or what communities don't want, it makes the job of finding out what they do want that much easier. So, it's almost a process of elimination.
I completely agree. And again, that's just great screening. But Scott, I wanted to just say thank you for your time. I mean, I've enjoyed this conversation so much, and I know our listeners will all benefit from it. So I want to express my heartfelt gratitude and appreciation, and thank you.
No, you're very welcome. It was enjoyable. It was very fun I don't get a chance to talk about these things very often. So it was fun to share those with you. Great questions.
Oh, thank you. And I'd be remiss without thanking our listeners. Hey, everybody. Without you guys, this wouldn't be going, and we keep growing every single week, and it's very humbling, but it must mean we have great guests like Scott and so many others on that you all want to learn from. So if this changed your mind on, or made you think differently about how to define hospitality or create hospitality or design, please pass it along to a friend. It's all word of mouth. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.